Good morning, my dear students. Today, our chapter is cerebral hemispheres. Cerebral hemispheres. Hemi means of, sphere means a rounded one. So, they are rounded one, they are hemispheres. There are two cerebral hemispheres, right hemisphere and left cerebral hemispheres. Right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. Both are called as cerebral hemispheres. Cerebral hemispheres, they are very well developed in higher mammals, especially human beings. That's why they assume largest in size when compared with all of the central nervous system. So here itself it indicates the cerebral hemispheres are highly evolutionarily developed. Evolutionarily highly developed. They are largest in size. That is the characteristic feature of cerebral hemisphere because it is the supreme part of the central nervous system. It is the supreme part of the central nervous system. All activities in the central nervous system are controlled through the cerebral hemispheres. So I will go more details into the chapter. So after studying this chapter, after learning this chapter, you must be able to explain the external features of the cerebral hemispheres. Both right and left, they are anatomically the similar one, but functionally difference are there. So right cerebral hemisphere, left cerebral hemisphere. External features of the cerebral hemisphere. So anatomically, and also the functional areas present in the cerebral hemisphere. So the cerebral hemispheres are divided into certain functional areas. So what is the functional areas? So which area is related with what function of the human body, that you must know it because cerebral hemispheres controls the entire body. Cerebral hemispheres are well developed in the central nervous system. So at the end of this class, you must be able to identify, explain the external features of the cerebral hemisphere, functional areas of the cerebral hemisphere, functional areas of the cerebral hemisphere, right, second one. Third one, the motor and sensory speech aphasias, motor and sensory speech aphasias. And fourth one, what is the cerebral dominance? There are two cerebral hemispheres, right and left. So left cerebral hemisphere is more dominant in 90% of the population. Right cerebral hemisphere is more dominant in 10% of the population. What is the meant by cerebral hemisphere domination? You must be able to explain all these four features after end of this session, after end of this class. Describe the external features of cerebral hemisphere. Describe the functional areas of the cerebral hemisphere. Give the anatomical base of motor and sensory aphasias. Motor and sensory aphasias. Describe the cerebral hemisphere dominance and discuss its clinical significance. So, right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. Externally, both are similar, but functionally, there is difference. They are not real mirror images. Externally, they are similar, but they are functionally, they are not real mirror images. So, you must be able to explain the cerebral hemispheric dominance and discuss its clinical significance. Now, cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. Cerebrum is the largest part of brain. Already I told you, it is very well developed. It is the supreme part of the central nervous system. To do all functions, the cerebral hemispheres are large in size and occupy the skull cavity. So, cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It is two halves, right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. They are ovoid shape of mass, broader behind than anterior. It is a ovoid shape of mass, broader behind. So they are more broader in back side than the anterior side. If any person gives you a human brain, if asked you to identify the anterior part and posterior part, you must keep the posterior part as broader part and anterior part as a pointed part. So, in between the two cerebral hemispheres, a deep median long cleft, longitudinal cerebral fissure incompletely separates the two cerebral hemispheres. So, the right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere are separated from each other, not completely, incompletely. These two are united by means of corpus callosum. So, that is a commissural. A band is present between the right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. But the right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere are separated, but not completely. They are incompletely separated. That means a longitudinal or a medial cleft is there. So, the dura mater gives a fold into the two cerebral hemispheres. The dura mater gives a fold into the two cerebral hemispheres extending from the anterior to posterior aspect. So, a deep median cleft, longitudinal cerebral fissure incompletely separates the two cerebral hemispheres, right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. Externally, both are same, but functionally, they are different. So, it is not completely cent-person mirror images. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It is highly developed. All functions of the human body are controlled through the cerebrum. It is evolutionarily, it is highly developed one, especially in higher developed mammals, vertebrates, especially in human beings. It is the highly developed, so that it occupies a large quantity and large mass over the central nervous system and over the brain. So, the largest part of the brain is the cerebrum. As usual, central nervous system contains gray matter and white matter. The gray matter of the cerebrum, cerebral hemispheres, is present outside, whereas inner part is white matter. So, the white matter is present in the center and cerebrum gray matter is present outside the cerebral hemisphere. Inner part contains the white matter. As usual, the gray matter contains neurons, white matter contains fibers. It is common phenomena. So, in the spinal cord, central part is gray matter, peripheral part is white matter. In the cerebrum, peripheral part is gray matter, central part is white matter. So, gray matter consists of neurons. Neuron is the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Structural and functional unit of the nervous system is the neuron. So, white matter consists of white fibers. They are fibers coming from the neurons. They are axons and dendrites. So, that is the common phenomena everywhere in the central nervous system. So, now external features of the cerebral hemisphere. Already I told you, the posterior part of the cerebral hemisphere is broader than the anterior part. The anterior part is a little pointed. So, it has got poles, it has got surfaces, it has got borders, it has got sulci, it has got gyri. Poles, anterior pole and posterior pole and temporal pole. Surfaces, supralateral surface, supromedial surface, infralateral surface, and medial border, infromedial border, like that. So, if a oval mass is divided into two halves, so you imagine it is an oval mass. If it is divided after boiling into the center, so you see posterior part is broader, anterior part is pointed. So, that is posterior pole, this is anterior pole. On the infromedial, on the infralateral aspect, in the middle, there is temporal pole. So, three poles are there. Surfaces, superior part, supromedial border, infromedial border, and exact total medial border, and supralateral surface. Like that, you can divide the poles, surfaces, and borders by comparing sectioning a boiled egg, or seeing practically the cerebral hemispheres or mass of brain present in our museum by keeping the textbook by the side. Now it has got poles, surfaces, borders, sulci, and gyri. Here I will tell you what is sulci, what is gyri. The brain is not cerebral hemisphere is not a complete plain mass like a boiled egg. It is dipped deeply. They are called sulci. In between the depths, that is, matter present between the two depths is gyri. So, matter present between the two depths is gyri. I will show you what is sulci and what is gyri. So, this is sulci. This is sulci. So, this is the matter present between these two, this sulci and this sulci. So, a raised part that is called gyri. It is gyri. So, the brain is cerebral hemisphere is gyri. Gyri pattern is present in the cerebral hemisphere. It is the characteristic feature of advanced vertebrates. It is the characteristic feature of advanced vertebrates. So, in vertebrates, the sulci and gyri are more prominent when compared with, especially in mammals, it is more prominent when compared with reptiles. So, when compared with brain of reptiles, you go into the brain of lower animals, it will be, for example, phylum Annelida, earthworm. You see a mass, a rounded mass. Two masses is present as a brain in the earthworm. So, as the phylum is advancing, development is advancing, the brain has developed, and highest convoluted pattern, sulci and gyri pattern is present in the human brain because human being is a highly advanced animal in the nature. Human being is a highly advanced animal in the human nature. So, sulci and gyri are more prominent in human brain. So, here I want to tell you one thing. Fingerprints. Your fingerprints does not tally with the fingerprint of another person. So, similarity of fingerprints is very, very, very rare. So, like that, the sulci and gyri pattern present in the human brain is different from individual to individual. Is different from individual to individual. So, a clear-cut pattern of sulci and gyri and clear-cut pattern of sulci and gyri, you have to identify whether it is a human brain or an animal brain or a lower animal's brain. By observing the sulci and gyri, you can identify whether the brain belongs given to a mass of brain given to you belongs to a vertebrate advanced mammal in pattern or not. You can identify it. So you can identify the brain, a mass is given by observing the sulci and gyri whether it is a human brain or not. So a clear-cut pattern of sulci and gyri, a very well advanced pattern of sulci and gyri presents that you can identify it as a human brain when compared with lower animal brains. So they are usually plain, and sulci and gyri pattern are not predominantly present in lower animals. It is highly developed in mammals, especially in human beings, which is evolutionarily highly developed. So the sulci and gyri pattern is very well developed. So the brain cerebrum is the largest mass because all important functions and motor functions, sensory functions, all intellectual functions and everything has to be done through these highest command centers present in the cerebral cortex. That's why the mass is more. So, a large mass to accommodate in a small cavity, it is folded. It is folded to accommodate a large mass within a limited space. That is the reason why it is developed in a sulci and gyri pattern. Because cerebrum is highly developed and it is a large in mass, whereas the cranial cavity is a limited space. We accommodate the sulci and gyri pattern has occurred and it is essential for the highly developed individual. So, this sulci and gyri pattern is very well demarcated and highly efficient. So, in highly efficient individuals when compared with a poorly intelligent people. So, by observing this sulci and gyri pattern in a clear-cut manner and a well-defined manner, you can say the person is an intellectual animal, so especially human being. So this is the importance. So the Salsa and Gyre pattern does not correspond with the another one's Salsa and Gyre pattern of another individual, like fingerprints, like fingerprints. When you study the so external poles, anterior pole is sharper, anterior pole is pointed, posterior pole is wider. Surfaces already I told you. Borders I have told you. The Salkai and Gyre pattern I told you and explained you. You have to write. Now this is the superolateral surface of the brain. This is the superolateral surface of the brain. A central sulcus is present. A central sulcus is present on the superolateral surface. So this is the frontal pole. This is the occipital pole. This is the frontal pole. This is the occipital pole. So you see this frontal pole is more pointed, whereas the occipital one is more broader when compared with the frontal pole. So this is the frontal pole, this is the occipital pole. So just a little behind the center of the frontal and occipital is a central sulcus. A few centimeters behind the midpoint between the anterior pole, frontal pole, and posterior pole, occipital pole is the central sulcus. So central sulcus is present in the cerebral hemisphere a few centimeters behind the center of the frontal pole and occipital pole. This is a central sulcus. So this is frontal lobe in front of the central sulcus, parietal lobe behind the central sulcus. So this central sulcus is an important sulcus. Because basing on this central sulcus, you can divide the frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and others into other sulci and gyri. Because the brain cerebral hemisphere is made up of sulci and gyri. So the remaining sulci and gyri are relatively named according to the central sulcus. So the central sulcus in autopsy by a pathologist is more important. If anybody asks you a question, which sulcus will be taken into consideration by a pathologist in doing autopsy? The central sulcus. Now, this is the lateral sulcus. Extending deep into the cerebral hemisphere. Below the central lateral sulcus is the temporal lobe. So, in front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe. Behind the central sulcus is the parietal lobe. So, below the lateral sulcus is the temporal lobe. Now, if you do this is a parietal lobe, this is an occipital pole and occipital lobe. Between the parietal lobe and the occipital lobe, a parieto-occipital sulcus is there. So, a parieto-occipital sulcus is there up to certain extent. From there, first imaginary line extends up to the pre-occipital lobe, dividing the occipital lobe from the parietal lobe above and temporal lobe below. So this is the, up to this one is parietal lobe, from below is the temporal lobe. So up to this one is the parieto-occipital sulcus. From there, a first imaginary line occurs and divides the occipital pole from the frontal pole, the parietal lobe above and temporal lobe below. So this is the frontal lobe, this is the parietal lobe, this is the occipital lobe and temporal lobe. And another one is there, that is the fifth lobe, that is deep, that is submerged below the temporal lobe in this area, that is the fifth lobe. Now this is the frontal pole, this is the occipital pole, and this is the temporal lobe projects inframedially as temporal pole. So this is the temporal pole. Frontal pole, occipital pole, temporal pole. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, temporal lobe, and fifth lobe, that is hidden lobe, is present. So fifth lobe is present here. To see the fifth lobe, you have to remove something here. So where I am pointing the cursor, if you remove something here, you will find the fifth lobe. I will show you the fifth lobe where it is present. This is the insula, island of Rail. This is a hidden part. It is nothing but extension of frontal, parietal, and temporal. So all the lobes, a little part is extended deep, and this is insula or island of Rail. So this is the frontal pole, this is the occipital pole, this is the temporal pole, this is the frontal lobe, this is the occipital lobe, this is the parietal lobe, this is the occipital lobe, and this is the temporal lobe. So this is the island of insula extending from frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal. So this is a hidden part. This is considered as a fifth lobe. You can consider it as a fifth lobe. So if anybody asks you regarding the features, you have to tell the poles, you have to tell the borders, you have to tell the surfaces, you have to tell the sulci and gyri. So you have to tell the important sulci and gyri. You have to tell the important sulci and gyri. Now this is the frontal pole, this is the parietal pole, this is the occipital pole, and temporal pole. So what are the sulci? This is the central sulcus. So what is the sulcus present in the frontal lobe? What is the sulci present in the parietal lobe? What is the sulci present in the parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and gyri? So what is sulci and gyri present in the temporal pole? So what functional areas are present in the frontal lobe? What functional areas are present in the parietal lobe? What functional areas are present in the occipital lobe? What functional areas are present in the temporal lobe? So we have to divide the cerebral hemispheres into lobes: frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. We have to divide. The cerebral hemisphere is totally divided into sulci and gyri. What sulci is present in the frontal lobe? What sulci is present in the parietal lobe? What is present in the occipital lobe? What is present in the temporal lobe? We have to mention important sulci. We have to mention important gyri. And in addition to this one, Brodmann, a scientist, has defined the entire cerebral hemisphere into certain functional areas. So that limited functional area is associated with certain functions has to be performed by the central nervous system. So that is the supreme control of that area, is the supreme control of such thing, of certain function. For example, our vision. This is the occipital pole. This is the visual area. This is the visual area, occipital lobe. So for example, this area, this is temporal lobe area. So this is motor speech area and sensory speech area. Like that. So this is the central sulcus. Before the central sulcus, motor area. Behind the central sulcus is the sensory area. So all these areas are named by Brodmann by up to 47. So this entire cerebral hemisphere, that means frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal, is divided into 47 functional areas. And all the functional areas present in the cerebral hemisphere is divided by Brodmann into 47 areas. So this is called as Brodmann's classification or Brodmann area. So this classification is named by Brodmann. So they are named area 1, 2, 3, area 4, or area 44 and 45 of Brodmann, or area 29 and 30 of Brodmann. Like that, they are given the name Brodmann. So the number is given the name of Brodmann. So a Brodmann, a scientist, classified the cerebral hemisphere into functional areas. Now I will tell you each functional area of the cerebral hemisphere has got differences with the other functional area. So each area of the cerebral hemisphere differs from the other functional areas. That means the entire cerebral hemisphere is not uniformly doing a single function. It does different functions, all the functions. So a particular area conducting one function is named, is given a number of 1, and that is named on the scientist broadband area 41, 42, like that he has given. So there is a difference in the anatomical and histological features of from one area to another area. For example, this is the central sulcus, this is the motor area, this is the sensory area. So the cells present in the sensory area is granular dominance. So the cells present in the motor area are pyramidal cell dominance. That is, large pyramidal cells is there. That is, pyramidal cells of Bridge are more prominent, are more in number in the motor area, whereas granular cells, so neurons are of granular type in the sensory area. This area contains granular type of neuronal cells. This area, motor area, contains pyramidal cells of neurons, pyramidal shape of neurons. They are large cells of Bridge. So functional areas of the brain differ anatomically and histologically. So there is a difference from one functional area to another functional area, both histologically and functionally. So you must know it very detailed in the further lecture. Now I want to tell you the important sulci. This is the central sulcus. Now before the central sulcus is precentral gyrus. Now this is the precentral gyrus. Precentral sulcus, central sulcus, precentral sulcus, and postcentral sulcus. This is the postcentral gyrus. This is the precentral gyrus. Precentral gyrus is the motor area. Postcentral gyrus is the sensory area. Now the area present in front of the precentral sulcus is the premotor area. The area present behind the postcentral gyrus is the pre-sensory area or post-sensory area. Post-sensory area. Now this is the precentral sulcus. It is again divided by a superior frontal sulcus and middle frontal sulcus. So middle frontal sulcus. This is a one sulcus. This is a one sulcus. Dividing this one into superior frontal gyrus, middle frontal gyrus, and inferior frontal gyrus. Now this is the central sulcus. This is the precentral sulcus. This is the precentral gyrus motor. Now the area present in front of the precentral sulcus is divided by means of superior frontal sulcus and middle frontal sulcus into 3 parts. This is superior frontal gyrus, this is middle frontal gyrus, this is inferior frontal gyrus. Now this is the postcentral sulcus. This is the postcentral sulcus. This is the central sulcus. This is the postcentral sulcus. So this entire parietal lobe is in green color. This is yellow color. This is purple color. This is a violet color. So a color difference of lobes. Frontal lobe in one color. So parietal lobe in one color. Occipital lobe in one color. And temporal lobe in another color. If you appreciate the colors, you can easily identify the diagram. If you appreciate the colors, you can easily identify the diagram. Now this parietal lobe is divided by intraparietal sulcus into superior parietal lobule above the intraparietal sulcus and inferior parietal lobule below the parietal sulcus. So this post-central sulcus. So the area present behind the post-central sulcus is divided by a intraparietal sulcus into superior parietal lobule and inferior parietal lobule. Now this is the lateral sulcus. This is the lateral sulcus dividing the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, and extending back and diverges into 1, 2 rami. 1 and 2 rami. So this is one area, this is one area, and this is one area. Now the temporal lobe is divided by superior temporal sulcus and medial temporal sulcus. So this is superior temporal gyrus area immediately above the superior temporal sulcus. So between the superior temporal sulcus and the inferior temporal sulcus is the middle temporal gyrus. Below the inferior temporal sulcus is the inferior temporal gyrus. So the temporal lobe is again divided by two sulcus, superior temporal sulcus and inferior temporal sulcus into superior temporal gyrus, middle temporal gyrus, and inferior temporal gyrus. Like that, all the lobes of the cerebral hemisphere is divided by sulci into gyri. So, what are the sulci, important sulci and gyri present in each lobe? You have to know it. You have to know it in the cerebral hemisphere class. Now, lateral sulcus of Sylvius is the most conspicuous of all sulci. This is the lateral sulcus of Sylvius. This sulcus is most conspicuous of all sulci. On reaching the supralateral surface, it divides into three rami: anterior horizontal, anterior ascending, and posterior. So, the supralateral surface it divides into three rami: anterior horizontal, anterior ascending, and posterior. The three rami diverge at a point from each other called Sylvian point. I will show you the Sylvian point. Now, this is the lateral sulcus. This is the lateral sulcus, most prominent sulcus. This is anterior horizontal at right angles to the lateral sulcus. This is going at parallel to the lateral sulcus. This is anterior ascending. Dividing this area into A, B, and C. A, B, C. So, this is at right angles. Anterior horizontal is at right angles to the lateral sulcus. So, anterior ascending, it is going upwards. So, this divided into A area, B area, and C area. So, these three areas are called divided Sylvian point. Now, central sulcus of Rolando. It is the only sulcus of any length that indents the supramedial border of the hemisphere. So, already I told you, lateral surface is present for the cerebral hemisphere. Medial surface is present for the cerebral hemisphere. So, the central sulcus of Rolando is the only sulcus of any length that indents the supramedial border of the hemisphere also. No other sulcus divides the medial border of the hemisphere. Only the central sulcus divides the supramedial border. Now, this is the central sulcus dividing the supralateral surface. So, the sulcus divides on the supramedial border also. The sulcus serves as a key to localize the other sulci and gyri for the pathologist while performing autopsy that already I explained you in the lecture. Calcarine sulcus is present on the medial surface and the cerebral surface. Parieto-occipital sulcus is present on the medial surface and the cerebral hemisphere. It begins at the midpoint of the Calcarine sulcus. So, if you keep the textbook diagram, if you see the sulci, you study the literature, if you compare with the practical brain specimen, so in our museum, you can easily understand. You have to compare the theory given in the textbook, see the diagram, then you have to compare the museum specimens present in our anatomy museum. Then you will definitely get a clear-cut idea. I am giving you the gross ideas of sulci and gyri. So if you go through the book, you go through this my PowerPoint that I am communicating it to you, you will get a full-fledged knowledge. One thing I am advising, my dear students, you have to read it repeatedly. By learning the lecture and reading the PowerPoint and going through the textbook, in first attempt, you will get some subject. In second attempt, you will get more subject. In third attempt, you will, after 2 days, you will get some more subject. So, first study, a difficult study, second study, easier study, and third study, most easier study. Fourth time, you have to recollect it and produce it in the paper. That is the only ability you can do it. So, lobes of the cerebral hemisphere. Frontal lobe anterior to central sulcus, parietal lobe behind the central sulcus, temporal lobe below the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, occipital lobe lies behind the vertical line joining the parieto-occipital sulcus and pre-occipital line. You read this one, you read this one, you read this one, you read this one. I will show you in the diagram. This is the central sulcus. In front of the frontal sulcus, frontal lobe. Behind the central sulcus is the parietal lobe. So this is parieto-occipital sulcus. An imaginary line connecting this one separates the occipital lobe from the above frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and below temporal lobe. So lateral sulcus touching the central sulcus and extending backwards and diverging into 1, 2, and 3. So like that. So below the lateral sulcus is the temporal lobe. In front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe. Behind the central sulcus is the parietal lobe. So a parieto-occipital sulcus and imaginary line connecting the pre-occipital lobe. This is the pre-occipital lobe. So this is occipital pole. Occipital lobe is before the, that is pre-occipital lobe. So an imaginary line connecting this one. This one is the occipital lobe. That is given in the literature in the PowerPoint. This is the shape that I showed in the diagram. Insula island of Rayleigh also called central lobe. That's fifth lobe. Insula is submerged portion hidden on the cerebral cortex in the floor of the lateral sulcus. Already I told you where is insula. If you want to see the insula, you have to remove certain part of the brain. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, and temporal lobe. So these three lobes. So this is occipital lobe. It is not concerned with it. So the fifth lobe is concerned with part of frontal lobe, part of parietal lobe, and part of temporal lobe. So the part of cerebral cortex from the frontal, part of cerebral cortex from the parietal, part of cerebral cortex from the temporal lobe are hidden. That is called a central lobe. That is called a central lobe or fifth one. You go through the lecture by seeing the diagram comparingly with each other, you will definitely get a good idea. In the parietal lobe, post-central sulcus, post-central gyrus. Superior and inferior parietal lobules by an intraparietal sulcus. So, supramarginal gyrus, angular gyrus, inferior temporal sulcus, arcus temporo-occipitalis. So, post-central sulcus, post-central gyrus. I will show you. This central sulcus. This is the post-central sulcus. This is the post-central gyrus. Now, this is the intraparietal sulcus. Superior parietal lobule, inferior parietal lobule. No, this is the lateral sulcus extending. So, superior temporal gyrus extending. So, this is the margin of parietal lobule covering the superior temporal sulcus. That is supramarginal gyrus. So, margin of parietal lobule covering this sulcus is inferior marginal gyrus or inframarginal gyrus. So this is supramarginal gyrus, this is inframarginal gyrus or angular gyrus. So like that it is given. Now this occipital sulcus, in the occipital lobe, a sulcus is present in half moon that is called lunate sulcus. So this entire area is visual area. So already I told you superior and inferior temporal sulcus, superior, middle and inferior temporal gyrus, anterior temporal gyrus or Hazel's gyrus was the primary auditory area of the cortex. Anterior temporal gyrus or Hazel's gyrus. This forms the auditory area. Here auditory area is there. This is frontal eye field. This is frontal eye field. This is I will explain you each and everything. Sulci and gyri are the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. Corpus callosum is the most conspicuous feature. Corpus callosum, central part, the trunk, thick posterior end, splenium, curved anterior end, genome. That means anterior end is genome, posterior end is splenium, thick part, and central part is trunk. This is the corpus callosum, a white band, corpus callosum. connecting the right cerebral hemisphere and left cerebral hemisphere. So above that is cingulate sulcus is there. Between the corpus callosum and the cingulate sulcus is the cingulate gyrus. So immediately above the corpus callosum is the callosal sulcus, because corpus callosum, sulcus means a depth. Sulcus means a depth. So immediately above the corpus callosum, a depth present by the side of the corpus callosum is the callosal sulcus. So this is the cingulate. This is the cingulate sulcus. So this is the cingulate gyrus. This is the cingulate gyrus. Now the cingulate sulcus present on the medial surface extends backwards and projects into the upward region and goes backwards and projects into the backward region. So this is called as, this is the central sulcus. So this is the present in frontal lobe. This is present in the parietal lobe. This is present in the frontal lobe. So on either side of the central sulcus, say a part in the frontal parietal lobe, a part in the frontal, a part in the frontal lobe, a part in the parietal lobe, both constitute the paracentral lobule. This is the central sulcus. So this is the frontal lobe. This is the occipital lobe. This is the parietal lobe. So a part of parietal lobe, a part of frontal lobe, on either side of the central sulcus constitute the paracentral lobule. This is a paracentral lobule. This is the posterior end of the corpus callosum. This is the anterior end of the corpus callosum. This is the trunk of the corpus callosum. This is the trunk of the corpus callosum. Where I have put the cursor is the trunk of the corpus callosum. This is the anterior part of the corpus callosum. This is the posterior part of the corpus callosum. So splenium, this is splenius, and a more curved part is genu. So this is the medial frontal gyrus. Paracentral lobule is the cortical highest central of center for micturition and defecation, urination and motion passing. Paracentral lobule is the cortical highest center of micturition and defecation. This is the paracentral lobule. So this one and this one. This is the both are highest centers of micturition and urination and defecation. The urinals and the lavatory. So urinal center and the lavatory center, this is the paracentral lobule. So your urination, that is micturition, and your lavatory, both are controlled by the paracentral lobule. Both are controlled by the paracentral lobule. Where I put the cursor is the paracentral lobule. This is the paracentral lobule. So your urination and defecation is controlled by this area. Paracentral lobule is the cortical highest center of micturition and defecation. Calcarine sulcus, parieto-occipital sulcus. Cuneus, precuneus, suprasplenial sulcus. Now cuneus, precuneus. Now this is the parietal lobule, this is the occipital lobule. In between these two, parieto-occipital sulcus is there. It is more prominent on medial side when compared with the lateral side. So this is the calcarine sulcus. This is the calcarine sulcus extending backwards. So in between these pre-occipital, parieto-occipital sulcus and calcarine sulcus is the cuneus. So the area in front of the parieto-occipital sulcus, this is the precuneus. This is the precuneus. So another sulcus extends on the medial surface of the parietal lobule. So this is the suprasplenial sulcus. This is the suprasplenial sulcus. So this is the one area and this is the another area. This is suprasplenial area. This is the intrasplenial area because it is called as suprasplenial sulcus. So this entire cerebral hemisphere is divided into sulci and gyri. You have to name them. Sulci and gyri are the inferior surface of the cerebral hemisphere. On the orbital part of the inferior surface, olfactory sulcus is present, gyrus rectus is present, orbital sulcus S-shaped is present, anterior, posterior, medial and lateral orbital gyri is present. Now, already we discussed here with the superolateral surface and medial surface. Now we are going into the inferior surface. This is the inferior surface of the cerebral hemisphere. This is the tentorial surface. This is the orbital part. This is the temporal lobe. This is the occipital lobe. Now, this is the temporal lobe. Most medial part and more prominent part is the uncus is present in the temporal lobe. Now, this is again divided by one sulci, and this is another sulci into. This is occipito-temporal. This is the temporal lobe. This is the occipital lobe. So this is called occipito-temporal sulcus, and this is named as collateral sulcus. Dividing this one into lateral occipito-temporal gyrus, middle occipito-temporal gyrus, and parahippocampal gyrus. Now, two sulci dividing on the inferior surface of the temporal lobe and occipital lobe into three gyri. This is occipito-temporal sulcus and collateral sulcus. Dividing the inferior surface of the temporal lobe and this is the occipital lobe, this is the temporal lobe. They are divided by two sulci into one gyri, second gyri, and third gyri. This is the parahippocampal gyrus. This is the middle occipito-temporal gyrus. This is the lateral occipito-temporal gyrus. Now this is divided. Now this is the orbital surface of the frontal lobe. This is the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. This is the inferior surface of the frontal lobe. An H-shaped sulcus is present on the inferior surface of the orbital frontal lobe. Inferior surface of the frontal lobe contains an H-shaped sulcus dividing into anterior and posterior, medial and lateral gyri. An H-shaped sulcus present on the inferior surface of the frontal lobe divides it into anterior gyri, orbital gyri, posterior orbital gyri, medial orbital gyri, and lateral orbital gyri. Now, another olfactory sulcus extends on the inferior surface of the frontal lobe on medial aspect. This is the medial border, inframedial border. So, this is divided by olfactory sulcus. So, olfactory sulcus into gyrus recti. This is concerned with olfaction. This is olfactory bulb. This is olfactory bulb. This is orbital sulci. This is olfactory sulci. So, olfactory sulci and orbital sulci are present on the inferior aspect of the frontal lobe, that is orbital surface. Cerebral cortex is the surface layer of the gray matter covering the cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere controls the opposite half of the body, sends motor commands to the received sensory information from opposite half of the body, contralateral. Because all our sensations you are receiving goes to the opposite part of the sensory cortex. Whatever commands coming in the cerebral cortex are going to the opposite half of the body. Now, sensory means towards the center. Motor means from the center to the periphery. So, from the periphery, sensory impulses goes to the opposite part of the sensory cortex present in the opposite cerebral hemisphere. For example, right side sensations goes to the left side, and left side sensations goes to the right side cerebral hemisphere. So, contralateral. So, motor impulses coming from the cerebral cortex goes to the opposite half of the body. For example, impulses coming from the left cerebral hemisphere motor goes to the right part of the body, that is contralateral. That is called contralateral. So, one hemisphere controls the opposite half of the body and another hemisphere controls the another opposite half of the body. That is called contralateral. Types of cerebral cortex. So the entire cerebral cortex is divided into 3 types. Oldest, that is archicortex. In man, hippocampus and part of rhinencephalonic region are the archicortex. Paleocortex, that is intermediate part. Intermediate in development, that is cingulate gyrus. Already I told you cingulate sulcus and cingulate gyrus. So neocortex, recent in development, 90% of the total area of the cerebral cortex. So old part, intermediate part, and 3 parts. Cerebral cortex is divided into 3 parts. Oldest, hippocampus and parts of rhinencephalic region. I will show you. This is rhinal sulcus. This is uncus. So hippocampus. This is rhinal sulcus. This is called parahippocampal gyrus. Hippocampal gyrus is present here. Approximately, this is the hippocampal area. This one and this one is the oldest part, archicortex. This one and this one is the oldest, archi. Paleocortex, intermediate in development, cingulate gyrus. So intermediate in development, cingulate gyrus. I will show you the cingulate gyrus. This is the corpus callosum. This is the callosal sulcus. This is the cingulate sulcus. So this is the cingulate gyrus. Area 24 and 23, intermediate in development. So remaining entire one, this is all one, all cerebral cortex are modern, that is 90%, that is called neocortex. So I have shown you where the oldest cortex, archicortex is present, where the paleocortex, intermediate cortex is present, where the modern 90% highly developed cerebral cortex is there, neocortex. So 90% neocortex is present in neocortex. In modern developed part, highly developed cerebral cortex is present in human beings, whereas the relative ratio, oldest cortex, archicortex is more predominant in lower vertebrate animals. In lower vertebrate animals, archicortex is more developed because the function of the archicortex and paleocortex, archicortex, oldest cortex, and paleocortex, intermediate in development cortex, these two are dominated by the neocortex in human being. So the neocortex, 90% of the human cerebral cortex is neocortex, that is the modern one that has taken function, all functions of the old intermediate cortex, paleocortex, and archicortex, oldest cortex, is taken by the modern cortex, neocortex in human beings. That is reason why cerebral cortex is highly developed. So percentage of neocortex is more in highly developed animals, especially in human beings. That you must know the anatomical difference. Now this is the naming of the areas. Area 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 24, 23, 28, 19, 18, 17, 17, 18, 19. Like that he has given on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. These are all areas. Function different. 10 area function is different. 11 area function is different. 3, 1, 2 is different. 4th area and 6th area, they are sensory area. 3, 1, 2, they are motor areas. Like that it is divided. Like that it is divided. Now this is the area. 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4, 6. 4, 6, motor. 4th is the motor area, primary motor area, and premotor area is the area 6. 3 to 1 is the sensory area, and this is the another associated sensory area. So this is the supralateral surface of the cerebral hemisphere, how this is divided into areas by Brodmann. So motor speech area of Broca, 45 and 44. Primary auditory area, this is the secondary auditory area, area 20, 22. So this is the area 40 and 39, sensory speech area. So this is the primary visual area. This is the visual association areas. This is the occipital lobe, primary visual area. This is 18 and 19 are visual association areas, are secondary visual areas. Now this is the primary motor area. This is the premotor area, secondary motor area. This is the primary sensory area. This is the secondary sensory area. So the premotor areas associated with motor areas are called as secondary motor areas. Sensory area associated with the primary sensory area is secondary sensory area, but he has given a name as primary motor area as motor 1 M1 area and secondary motor area is M2 area. Primary sensory area is S1 area and secondary sensory area is S2 area. But in recent identifications, it has been identified that this motor area is not purely motor area. Sensory area is not purely sensory area, but sensory function is more dominant. Motor function is more dominant. So it's called as somatosensory area and somatomotor area. They are associated body functions. So it's called as somatomotor areas and somatosensory areas. But it's not 100% total motor area and total sensory area. So you must go through this diagram very well. You have to practice it. Functional areas in the frontal lobe. Human body is represented upside down in the precentral gyrus, inverted over, clinical correlation. Lesions of primary motor area in one hemisphere produce flaccid paralysis of opposite half of the body, hemiplegia. Before the central sulcus is the motor area. So lesion in that area controls the opposite half of the body. So hemiplegia occurs in opposite half of the body. This is the representation. So motor representation and sensory representation does not depend upon the mass of the body. For example, your leg is a large mass, but it occupies a less motor and sensory area. Your hand is a small mass when compared with leg, but it does more skillful movements. So hand occupies a more motor and sensory area. So depending upon the skillness of the movements, so the area is providing the motor and sensory areas. Volume of area providing the motor and sensory area depends upon the skillful movements and skillful functions, but not depend upon the mass. You must know it. Area number 6, motor area, Brodmann anterior to premotor area. It is the main site for the cortical organ of extrapyramidal, cortico-rubral, cortico-olivary, cortico-radial fiber. Clinical correlate. Lesions of premotor, secondary motor area produce difficulty in the performance of skilled movements. Supplementary motor area, located in the medial frontal gyrus and the medial surface of the hemisphere. Clinical correlation. Lesions of supplementary motor area produce bilateral flexor hypotonia with no paresis or paralysis. So already I had given in the PowerPoint what area, lesion of what area, and causes what functional correlate disarrangement. You can go well through the PowerPoint repeatedly and repeatedly. This is nothing but from standard textbooks. Frontal eye field area, area 8. Posterior part of the middle frontal gyrus, located in the posterior part of the middle frontal gyrus. So, what is that area and what is the location I have mentioned in the theoretical part. So, frontal eye field area, area 8. So, this is the area 8 on medial surface. This is area 8. This is the central sulcus. This is the premotor area. This is the superior frontal gyrus, middle frontal gyrus, inferior frontal gyrus. Area 8 is the frontal eye field. This is concerned with vision. So this is visual cortex, primary visual area. So this is frontal eye field. This is prefrontal area. So like that, cerebral hemisphere is divided into number of functional area. So the function of each cerebral hemisphere is associated with typical function. So anatomical difference is there, histological difference is there, and functional difference of all these areas is there in the cerebral hemisphere. Supplementary motor area, located in the medial frontal gyrus. Clinical correlation, lesion of supplementary motor area produce bilateral flexor hypotonia. Hypotonia means flexor muscles become loose, so the tone of the muscles is decreased with no paresis or paralysis, but paralysis is not present. But The functional tone of the muscle is decreased. Flexor muscle functional tone is decreased with supplement motor area damage. Frontal eye field area 8. Frontal eye field controls voluntary scanning movements of the eyes and is independent of visual stimuli. Motor speech area, Broca's area 44 and 45. Located in the pars triangularis area 45 and pars opercularis area 44 of the inferior frontal gyrus of frontal lobe in left hemisphere of right-handed people. In right hemisphere of left-handed people. Clinical correlation. Lesion of this area produce loss of ability to speech, expressive aphasia, motor aphasias. So already I told you, motor aphasias. You must know the aphasias. Inability to produce speech. Inability to express your speech. So area 44 and 45. Where is that area present? Area 44 and 45. You see? This is motor speech area, area 44 and 45. So this is the inferior frontal gyrus. This is the middle frontal gyrus. This is the superior frontal gyrus. This is the superior frontal sulcus. This is the middle frontal sulcus. So divide this one into 1, 2, 3. This is the prefrontal area. This is the entire one is prefrontal area. Frontal eye field, motor speech area 44, Broca. Now prefrontal area, frontal lobe, rostral motor and premotor area, concerned with individual personality. Now the entire frontal lobe in front of the central sulcus is associated with personality. It is concerned with the depth of emotions, social, moral and ethical awareness, concentration, orientation and foresightedness. Dora drushti antar. So some will assess what will be happened. They never study before until the examination comes. They lack foresightedness. Dora drushti undadu anamata. Now frontal lobe development ఏదో డిఫెక్ట్ ఉందని లెక్క. So it is concerned with the depth of emotions, social, moral and ethical awareness, concentrations, orientation and foresightedness. Bilateral destruction of frontal area due to trauma results in profound change in personality. So after injury to the head, some will change their personality. That means a frontal lobe is affected. In certain personalities who has got schizophrenia, the frontal lobe is damaged. In criminal individuals who has got criminal mentality, frontal lobe is damaged. In such individuals, such area is ablated. That means removal of such area by the surgery to make the person calm. So primary sensory area behind the central sulcus, 312, located in past central gyrus. Primary sensory area is concerned with the perception of exterioceptive, pain, touch and temperature, and proprioceptive, vibration, muscle and joint sensations from the opposite of the body. Post-central gyrus. So behind the central sulcus is the sensory area. Sensory area is present in parietal lobe. Motor area is present in frontal lobe. Lesion of primary sensory area led to the loss of appreciation of exterioceptive and proprioceptive sensations from opposite of the body. Because exterioceptive, pain, touch, temperature, proprioceptive, vibration, joints and etc. Both are damaged in post-central areas. Secondary sensory area is located in the upper lip of the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. Whole body is represented bilaterally. This area relates more to pain perception. Ablation of this area may relieve intractable pain. Sensory association area occupies the superior parietal lobule corresponding to the area 5 and 7. It is concerned with perception of shape, size, roughness and texture of the object. Clinical anatomy. Lesions of this area results in inability to recognize or identify an object by its shape. This condition is called tactile agnosia or stereognosis. So already the cerebral hemisphere is divided into areas. They are named by Brodmann. So each area is associated with certain functions. So involvement of this area is associated with loss of function of the body activities concerned with that area. That is the principle, and this is the point. Sensory area of learning. It is located in the left dominant hemisphere, posterior part of the superior temporal gyrus, area 39 and 40. It is concerned with interpretation of language through visual and auditory input. Sensory and motor speech areas exist together in one hemisphere only. Loss of Wernicke's area in the dominant hemisphere produces loss of ability to understand spoken and written speech. This condition is called receptive sensory aphasia. So, motor speech aphasia, receptive sensory aphasia. So, I have explained the objectives of aphasia. Functional areas in the temporal lobe. Primary auditory area, area 41-42, is located in the inferior wall of the lateral sulcus. Primary auditory area receives input from the medial genicular body through auditory radiation. This area is concerned with the reception of isolated impressions of loudness, quality, and pitch of the sound. It also picks up the source of sound. Clinical anatomy. Unilateral lesion of the primary auditory area causes slight loss of hearing. Bilateral lesion causes complete cortical deafness. Motor aphasia and sensory aphasia, a table taken from the textbook, you can go through it. Now, secondary auditory area. Situated in the lateral surface of the superior temporal gyrus, this area is responsible for the interpretation of sound type. Clinical correlation. Lesion results in inability or interpret the meaning of the sounds and word deafness, auditory vertebral agnosia. Functional areas in the occipital pole. So, you have to read all the functional areas present. What are the functional areas present in the frontal lobe? What are the functional areas present in the parietal lobe? What are the functional areas present in the occipital lobe? What are the functional areas present in the temporal lobe? So, lesion of that particular area, what function is lost, and what signs and symptoms will be produced. You have to go well through the textbook and also through the PowerPoint. So, secondary visual area, area 18 and 19. So, other functional areas in the cerebral cortex. Staged area, gestatory area located in the inferior part of the parietal lobe, adjoining area of insula, area 43. Vestibular area is probably located near the part of the postcentral gyrus, which is concerned with sensation of the face. Olfactory area, Brodmann's area, so is located in the anterior part of the parahippocampal gyrus. Taste area, vestibular area, olfactory area, and also the name given by the Brodmann, area 43 and area 28. Cerebral hemisphere dominance. Congruity in sight, shape, features are same for right and left cerebral hemisphere. But neuronal activities, they are not mirror images. Each cerebral hemisphere has its own contributions. Left hemisphere is more efficient as far as handedness, perception of language, speech, writing calculations, numerical skills are concerned. Right hemisphere is more efficient with spatial perception, recognition of faces, creative acts of arts and music, and non-verbal ideation. So, in both hemispheres, left and right cerebral hemispheres are very well developed and works in coordination with each other. The individual is more intellect and more balanced, but usually one hemisphere is dominant in one and majority of the people. Usually, the left cerebral hemisphere is more dominant in 90% of the people. That is identified by right hand writing. A person who will write with right-handedness, left cerebral hemisphere domination is there. Left hand writing, right cerebral hemisphere is dominant. So, majority of you are right-handed people, so left cerebral hemisphere is more dominant in majority of the individuals than right cerebral hemisphere. So this domination of a cerebral hemisphere is not well marked up to the 10 years of age. After 10 years of age only, the child will get the domination of cerebral hemisphere. So the domination of right cerebral hemisphere or left cerebral hemisphere will be decided by the individual only after 10 years of age. So you did not allow, if any child is writing with left hand, so it indicates right cerebral hemisphere is dominant in him. That's why he is writing with left hand. You should not scold the child. You should not allow, you should not force the child to practice writing with the right hand because his right cerebral hemisphere is dominant. That's why he is writing with left hand. So you should not create confusion. So that is also common. That is lateralization of functions in the dominant and non-dominant hemispheres occurs only after 10 years of age. So now I am concluding the chapter. So external features of the cerebral hemispheres. Number one, functional areas present in the cerebral hemisphere. Name the functional areas present in the cerebral hemisphere. External features, sulci and gyri. Name the functional areas present in sulci and gyri. And what are the functions associated with them? And you can identify the speech aphasias, motor speech aphasias, and sensory speech aphasias, and aphasias, all types of aphasias, and all functional losses associated with the regions. You must identify the cerebral hemisphere is highly dominant. You must identify the histological features in the class of histology because this time is not sufficient. So at the end of this session, you must know the external features of the cerebral hemisphere, the functional areas of the cerebral hemisphere. You must be able to know the aphasias, aphasias, motor speech aphasias, and auditory speech aphasias, and everything. And you must know the dominance of the hemisphere. So the chapter is divided in these 4 criteria. You must be able to answer in these 4 criteria. And thank you very much for your patient learning. And once again, you go through the textbook, you go through the PowerPoint, you go through the lecture. Repeated reading and repeated learning is more important for a medical student. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Okay, sir. ఈ సెంట్రల్ సిస్టమ్ అంటే